ahead and start. I just discovered something interesting. If I share, it's just a Zoom thing. If I share the Excel, for some reason, some people don't see the drop downs. But if I share my screen, you will. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay, first question. How many of you work with Excel tables? I mean, you may work with Excel, but have actually worked with Excel tables. Yes, no, you know. Looks like most have. Okay. All right, so actually, let me do one more thing too. Yes, we don't have the background noise. All right, so I'm not going to assume anything. So let's start at the beginning. What I have, and I will push this out to you as well. I thought I did, but actually I think I didn't. So I have here a table. It's not a very complicated one. It's actually, these are all real samples. This one's from a career and technical school. With some, the names have been changed, etc. And we just want to look at, how we create a table and what are some of the basic things we can do in a table. So I will tell you, in a table like this, where there are no blank spaces, I can pretty much create the table by, what I mean by no blank spaces is everything is filled in. I don't have a blank line anywhere. If you have a blank line, you don't want to do it this way. You want to actually highlight. But if all your data is filled in, you can just hit insert and it should create your table. So when you do that, you're going to get a dialog box. It's going to ask, does your table have headers? This table has headers. What they mean by headers is the top row are descriptors. So in this particular case, it's student name, district, etc. So it does have a header. When you do that, it's going to change your table, change your data into a table. And it usually will select a color. And, it depends on what you'd picked before, actually. But what I want to do is just show you how you can control that. So anytime you go into your table, you're going to see up top an additional table tab. And we're going to be looking at a lot of the options that are available under that tab. But the first one are the colors. So if you don't particularly like that color, you can select another. So here's the first tip. I mean, one of the most common questions I get asked with tables is, okay, you create a table. How do you get the data back to being a normal range? Okay, so I'm just going to go over how you do that first. But a bit of advice, if you're going to change your data back to a normal range, get rid of the colors, because the colors will remain and it's one pain in the neck to get rid of them once it's in a range. So all you have to do is go to the very end of your selection choices, and that'll basically give you a table without any colors. And what you then can do, and it's under the same table tab, is go convert to range. Do you want to do that? I do. Now I'm back to just having, a non-table. So I've kind of showed you how you round trip in and out of a table. Once again, I'm going to do it the different way. I'm going to highlight all of the cells. And again, why I might do that is if I had a blank line and I then select, it'll just only go up to that line. But if I've got a black line and I highlight everything, it's not a problem. So I just wanted to show you how to do it both ways. Going to ask me the same question. Again, do I want to, do I have a header row? And I do. Okay. All right. So the two basic things, and there are a lot of things you can actually do with tables, but the two basic things that you do are to sort and filter. Okay. So some of this data doesn't really make a lot of sense to filter, but others might. Okay. So for example, let's just talk about sorting. So I'm just going to go to district, and it's going to ask, do I want to sort my districts, my names, in ascending or descending order? So I'm going to select ascending, and now I have all of my districts have now been sorted, alphabetically. Okay, and I could have done descending as well. Okay, so the other thing that you can do with a table is you can also filter. And you can actually do multiple filtering. You can do it on any one of the columns. So let's suppose that I just wanted to look at the data for Bedford and Brewster, and we'll just do the Bs, okay? So what I can simply do is select Bedford, Brewster, and Briarcliff Manor, and now I have my data for Bedford, Brewster, and Briarcliff Manor, okay? So any questions so far? How many of you are familiar with sorting and filtering? Or at least sorting, or one or the other? Yes, no? So this is just a particular detail, but pivot tables are very prickly. Regular tables are not so prickly. So let me give you an example of what I mean by not so prickly, okay? So I'm gonna, kind of not wreck, but I'm gonna make a change here. In Bedford, I'm gonna add a leading space, a space in front, okay? And now I'm gonna go to filter. I'm just gonna filter Bedford. Notice it picked it up even though it had a leading space. Pivot tables will not. But in a regular table, you don't have to worry about that. Later, I'm actually going to show you how you can get rid of those, which more is probably for aesthetics. It's not so much for the sorting here, but it's not, you're not going to have a problem with that, okay? Another one you're not going to have a problem with is, I think it's called a trailing space, which is one at the end. I can even put 2 extras. Now, this one you wouldn't even see. But again, not going to be a problem if you go to filter. The other thing that's not going to be a problem with filtering is lower case. It's not case sensitive. So once again, it's always interesting. If you select, and it's not just I picked the first one, if you select any one of them, I'll just show you this. Again, probably not something terribly important, but if you select, let's say this third one, and what I'm going to do is just change that to a lowercase. When I do my filtering, notice, well, that's interesting. The last time I did it was different. I was going to say it's going to show it as lowercase, but I guess it's only the first item that's going to determine that. But in any case, you don't have to worry about case, whether it's case sensitive, okay? And again, you don't necessarily have to select them in order. I could have said, I want to look at Bedford, well, again, select all, select none. I want to look at Chappaqua, Bedford, and Briarcliff. And now I have my data for Bedford, Briarcliff, and Chappaqua. Okay. So watch what you hear. Make sure you unfilter if you're going to select something else, because you could do multiple filtering. So for example, here, I could say, I'm just going to look at the auto items. Auto items. Now I have it for all the districts, but maybe I just want to look at auto items for, and this is a very small data set. So in all of these cases, I'm only going to have one, okay? By the way, notice when I go to filter, it doesn't have all the districts. It only has the districts where there was an auto student. But let's say I select Hildane, and now I can do that. Okay. So any questions so far? So I want to make sure I select all here, and I want to make sure I select all here. And again, I could do gender, I could do anything else. Questions, comments, anything you want me to show so far? Now, the way filtering works is it actually hides the cells. So, I can pick, I'll pick this time gender just to be different. So if you look here on the side, you'll see that it's just hiding the cells. So watch out if you have any data to the size of it, to the right of it, actually the left of it, right of it, to the right of it, over here, it's going to affect it, okay? Because it's just hiding the cells, okay? By the way, again, just a lot of little things to show you. So I'm going to follow my own practice so I don't cause any trouble here. I'm going to take out the colors and I'm going to convert to arrange. Notice that when I convert to arrange, it unfilters. It won't unsort, but it will unfilter. Okay? So what if I wanted to use this table to maybe generate some reports? So so how can I do that? What's the easiest way? Well, once again, this gives me an opportunity to show you how you create a table again. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a report for male and female. So I'll start with my female students. So now what I can do is I can copy the table. And maybe actually even just go down here, okay? And paste it. Now, whenever you copy a table that is filtered and you paste it, even though the colors remained, it's now no longer a table. It's in normal range. If you copy a table that is unfiltered, it'll remain a table. But this is actually very convenient because what I can now do is go up top and select the other. And now I think the copying was already set, but I'm going to do it again just to be sure. So once again, I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it. So and obviously it's a very small data set, but if I wanted to generate, let's say I was managing this program and I wanted to generate reports by district or by program or more than one, I could certainly work off one table and then generate the two different reports. Questions so far? Okay. Yes, no. Are you alive? Okay. I didn't scare you off yet? So let's talk about another real practical use of this. So there are, you could, you could, first of all, you could use Excel to just track, but if you needed to produce budget reports by item, by category, that's where this filtering is really going to come in handy. Okay. So, and I think you'll see this when we do this next one. Okay. Not a very complicated table, and I already have it done actually, but I'm going to go through it again and show you, each time I show you a table, I add another little feature that's going to help you. Okay. So here I have just a little report on utility costs, okay? And I will tell you there are count functions, count if functions that would allow me to do the same thing without a table. And I often teach that when we do count if, but I'm going to show you a really neat and handy way to do some of this where you don't even really need to know a lot to get it done. So suppose that I wanted to generate reports by area, like total utility costs by per area, okay? So the first thing I want to show you, and again, I got to convert this. This is just data. I had done it all already, but I'm gonna take you through a few of them, okay? But anyway, once again, I can just select anywhere because there's no blanks. And I'm going to go insert table. And yet had headers, etc. Okay, so I'm going to go in my table again, and we're going to look at some of the selection options. But the one in particular that I want to focus on now, which a lot of people don't know, is, and it's not normally selected, is total row. So again, I'll just show you where it is. It's up top. You have your header row, banded rows. Banded rows is just the aesthetics. Whether you're showing your filters, but this total row one is really cool. Okay, so what that does, and actually I think I had a total in here already. I'm actually going to take it out. I don't have a total in there. All right, so I'm going to go through them. My apologies, when I copied it, I should have done this first. Okay. Let's convert it to a rows. All right. So I'm going to eliminate my totals. And we're going to do it again. Insert table. Yes, that's headers. Okay. And so I'm now going to select total row. And it's going to give me, it's going to give me the total of the most left-hand column. But as I'll show you later, you can actually do a total on any column. Now, obviously, I can't add up electricity and oil, but I could count them, how many items there are, and that's going to be affected by the filter. So I really can do anything that's numerical, I can total. Okay, so now I have my first, basically my entire data set. What if I wanted to filter this by just central office? Okay, so now I have my data for central office. Now, you might be tempted to just do this and do a sum, but sums don't work here if you just did an equal sum, because sum counts hidden rows. What you need to do is the function called subtotal. And I can actually show you what that looks like because it puts it in. So it's subtotal. What do you want? 109 means you're hiding the, and don't have your head explode. I'm going to show you this. Excel does all this automatically. This is if you wanted to understand what's going on behind the hood. So subtotal will only count the visible rows if you select a 1. And it's a universal application. So depending on which one of the numbers you select, it's going to do something different. So if you want to total up, it's a 9. If you want the count, it's a 2. If you want the lowest one, if you want the average. So most people know it's a 9 is sum. You don't need to know any of that if you do tables, because it handles it for you. Okay, so now I have my data for just central office. So you put it in automatically because I filtered. Now, if I wanted to do that, just as I had shown you with the schools, I now can just go and copy it down. And now I can come along and select something else. Maybe I want the high school. I won't do all of them because I have them actually done. I want the high school. Now I can copy that one. And now I have my high school. I put my label on top of it. And now I have the high school. And maybe I'll do one more. Well, actually, I won't. I think you get the point. So here I did all of them already. So here's my total. Here's total cost for electricity, total cost for oil by location. Okay. Now, by the way, here I did different sorts because I sorted by electricity and oil. Here I did sorts based on just location with both. But I certainly could have done just one. Questions? How many of you are familiar with the totaling and the automatic subtotaling? Oh, sure. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out which is the easiest one to show you. Okay. So here's all my data. Do I need to, it depends on how you have it linked. It might, depending on how you did your linking. It might. So to go back to showing it to you again, I'll show it to you totally from scratch. I'm going to erase everything here. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of my total row here. And once again, it's a table. I'm going to actually start, out of the table. Okay. So I'm back in a range. Okay. So first step, create the table. It's already in a table. You don't have to do this. Now, I have to make sure I'm inside the table or I won't see the table option. But once I'm in the table option, just click total row. And that automatically does it. Okay? I know someone said to show it to you again. Stephanie, does that do it? Yeah, it's really easy. And then again, each time you filter, just copy them down. Because if you copy them down, when you paste them, it's going to lock them in. Okay? If you don't do that, then every time you change your filter, you're going to change the result. So if I want to do a report of all of them, I'll copy each one. Okay? All right. Some more, fun stuff to show you. So here we have and I did this already, but actually, I'll take it out. Okay. So this is already in a table. I don't like that color. Let's do one that's a little easier for you to see. Okay, so we have, and this works, okay. If you were to change the value of the cost cell, it's dynamic, okay? So for example, if I change this value to, the one way you can always spot a difference, put an enormously large number. Yeah, it'll change. Okay? It'll absolutely change. Okay? All right. So I just want to show you something. And you might not think this is critical. It's more helpful when you're doing, which I'm not going to do today, when you're trying to convert tabular data into charts. However, it can be kind of nice when you're reporting, if you're going to be using Excel to report, okay? So I already did them, so I'm going to do them again. I'm going to get rid of them. but I want to talk about this idea of, and I got to go into tables again, everything's in table, okay, is a slicer, okay? So a slicer is a different way to filter. It's not, and the two are the, it's like two different switches. Like you have a, like some people have lighting in their house where they can have the bottom of the stairs and the top of the stairs switch both work. That's kind of what we're like with this. They both work, okay? So I'm gonna go into my slicer and I can select any of the items that were my headers. So I have a choice by any of the headers, including multiple ones. I just have to select each one individually. Okay, so let's say I'll do school to start with, okay? So now this is a slicer. Now the funny thing is when you're in a table, you get a table tab. When you're in a slicer, you get a slicer tab. And again, I could go into, there's a lot of little details here with slicers. So for example, you know, I can do a 2-column one, I can make it wider, this is kind of smaller, but I can certainly change the color of them if I'm gonna have multiple ones. Okay, so how does a slicer work? It's just another way to filter. So if I wanna just look at central, there's central. So now once again, by the way, if I wanna select all, I just click over here. If I wanna do multiple ones, I have to hold down on a Mac, it's a command. I think it's control on a PC. But you're going to hold on to more than one, and then it's going to select those, okay? So anyway, let's put the total back again. So we can kill two birds with one stone. I'm just going to hit my total row, okay? Now here's a good example. So it always puts the total for the most left-hand column. But maybe here what I really want are the totals for the salaries, okay? And I may not even care about this. So first of all, as you're gonna see, all of those options under subtotal are here to select. So here I'm gonna select none. Over here, I'm gonna select some. And maybe I'll also select benefits. So I'll do some as well, okay? So I don't want you to think, even though it only shows you the one for the left hand, you can actually select any of them. You can also deselect them by just saying none, okay? All right, so now let's go over and take a look at this. And again, just another way of doing what we could have done anyway. If I now want to see the salaries for central, I can use a slicer to do that. And then if I want to look, again, I'm not hitting the command key, so it's going to toggle between them. If I now want to look at elementary, it'll now give me elementary. If I want high school, it'll give me high school. If I wanted middle school, I don't know why I have two middle schools here, but you know, I'm probably because there's an error in my chart and one of them says middle. Okay, there's a perfect example of where I would really need to look at the chart and adjust the filtering. So let me see where it is. Somewhere I have instead of middle school. There we go. Okay, and that should resolve that issue. Okay, got it? Now again, if I wanted to look at high school and middle school, I would just hold down both, okay? So a couple things on slicers. If you get rid of the slicer, it does not reset. It'll leave it where it is. So if I delete the slicer, it didn't reset. It's still only middle school and high school. I could always go up here and reset, or I could re-add my slicer, okay? So I'm glad I got rid of my slicer because it provides me with an opportunity to show you again how you create one. So I'm gonna insert a slicer for school. And I'm curious what I did before. Okay, yeah, so I did one by unit also, okay. I was wondering what I picked. I mean, I didn't have to do the same thing again, but. So now I have a slicer for school. I can now add another slicer. So I go into my table, I add another slicer, and I'm going to pick unit, which is really, you know, types of positions. And now I have another one. But it's kind of boring to have them both be the same color. So this second slicer, I'll make one blue and the other one. So now I can actually do multiple sorts. So I can take central office, well, it's only administrators, so you'll shadow out anything that isn't included. But let's say, for example, I picked high school and middle school, and I wanted to look at faculty. So now I have my data from my high school and middle school faculty, and it totaled all the amounts. Okay. All right. So any questions on that? So I really sometimes like to use slicers, particularly if I'm presenting like at a meeting, because I think it's kind of handy. It's handier than going up and pulling down the tabs. And kind of makes it easier to go from one to the other. How many of you were familiar with slicers in tables? Yeah, so it's just nice and handy. Now, I do want to go again and point out that, what was that? To select more than one, I'm not sure on the PC if it's control, you'll figure it out. On my Mac, I hold down the command key and I would select down which ones I want, see? Because if I select only one, it'll take all the others out, okay? So it may be the control key on your PC, but you'll figure that out, okay? Any other questions? Now, again, I can always reset them, easily reset them back to the full data set. Let's say this. So I'm just going to sort by faculty. And again, point out some other things you can do with it besides summing. One that's really handy is counting. Now, make sure that if you're counting items, not numbers, that you select count, not count numbers. Because if I do count numbers, I'm going to get a blank here. There are no numbers. But if I do count, it's going to tell me I have 12 items. Because maybe I don't care about the amounts. Maybe I want to know how many faculty. Okay? So the totaling feature is really handy because it's kind of multifunctional. The ones I tend to use the most are sum, min, max, or count. So let's look at max. So that's going to give me the highest salary in the group. Or min, lowest salary in the group. I don't think I've ever used standard deviation, but I guess you could. Okay, so you get the idea of how the totaling gives you a lot of options to do a lot of formulas that if you had to do manually would be a lot more work. Okay, so it's really, really handy. Questions? Comments, political statements, thoughts? It's pretty easy, isn't it? Pretty easy, right? Okay. So here again, I just have a wider data set, okay? And these are like daily sales. Even this is a very small data set. Because if I were really looking at transactions for food service, they'd be many, many more, okay? But, we'll play with these small data sets anyway. Table. So I actually made a mistake here. I'm going to do it. I'm going to undo it. Yeah, because I had a blank column here, it picked up the column. So what I would really want to do here is highlight my cells or get rid of that, left-hand column. This may take a few minutes. Let's see. Now, if you want to know what I spend my weekends doing, it's putting together tables like this and entering the data on the set. I don't even know how many items there are. Yeah. I should have made it smaller.
Looks like you got a full school year's worth of data, Jeff.
Yeah, I think I created like a school year. So it's a lot, Oh, there we go. I hit the bottom.
Yeah, you know why?
Why?
Look at the last date.
Oh, yeah.
COVID.
Yes. Oh, you mean why it ended in March? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is fake data. So when I was doing, I must have thought of that. Okay, but anyway. All right. So now I'm going to insert it into a table. Yes, it has a header row. Okay, good. So now, this can be really great to do like an analysis that you really want to do. And again, you really want to be on the bottom when you do this. That's why slicers are handy. Because if I have to do my sorting and I'm kind of going to be on the bottom of my data, you have to scroll up and down. So I'm going to create a couple of slicers because I think that gives another excuse for why slicers would be good. So we're going to do school. I'll do one school. And it's only 2 schools. And I'll do another slicer for item. Okay. So now if I wanted to, and once again, I'm going to go and do this magical total thing, which is going to be so helpful. Now, again, it defaults, because this was text, it's going to default to count, count, because that's the only one you could really do. If it were numbers, it would have summed it, okay? So now, and by the way, I can even I can actually even pull my sliders to anywhere I want, because they're also at the top here of this data set. So I'm going to drag them both down. I could probably have done one at a time, both at a time, but I got time, so I can. So in the meantime, anybody have any questions while I'm scrolling through 3,000 items of data? I think I missed where it is. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I don't really love working with big data sets, but a lot of times we have them, If we're pulling data out of a, work order system or something, it could be large data sets. Or attendance, et cetera, right? Usually for my examples, I don't usually pull as much data like this for this reason. Because watching me do this is like watching paint dry. I gotta drag it down. And then I'm gonna have to do it again for the item. You know what? I'm getting tired of this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat. Delete all this data. You'll trust me that I could have done it with a big data set. Actually, I can just get rid of that. That's fine. Okay. Actually, good. Now, I'm just going to create like a smaller table so we don't go crazy here. Okay. All right. So with my little smaller table, once again, I have 49 items. Okay. And now I could insert a slicer. And insert a slicer for item. Okay, so now this shouldn't be too hard to scroll down. Okay. Okay. And again, I'll just, I'll make this slicer a different color. Yeah, I'm gonna mute. I think it came in. All right, we're good. Okay, so now if I wanted to know, okay, how many fish sandwiches did I sell? There's my number. If I wanted to know how many hamburgers I sold or how many side salads, if I wanted to know how many fish sandwiches, well, and hamburger for the high school, I could do that. So you get the general idea. It can do a lot of analysis on the fly with giving you totals, and then you could copy and paste those totals into, well, you can actually then convert them to percentages, which I'm going to show you next. Okay? Questions? Everybody good? Okay. So this is, again, just to give you an idea of possible uses. So we did a survey. This was actually in Texas and this was actually data from a Google form. So it converted into a Google sheet, and then I then imported it into Excel. Okay. So let me see if I had done this already. So I'm probably not gonna do the whole set because it's not necessary. We ask people questions on all these different topics. But just to give you an idea, I'm just going to pull like the first couple. And this was a relatively small data set, right? Okay. Thanks, Joe. As headers. Okay. I'm just going to change I think I'm actually going to get rid of the colors here, just so you can see it. Okay. So once again, my table is only up to here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this, my favorite thing, total rows. And it only went up to here. It's going to give me 31. But I'm actually going to select it for all of them. I want the count for here. And I want the count for here. Actually, I want the count for that one too. I don't care about locations. I don't think at this point I want to do titles. But let's assume that I wanted, to convert this like into data that I could use. Data that I could use to produce maybe a chart, okay? So we're just going to look at two of them. So one is the Google Suites, what is a platform you work with, and whether you're interested in personal wellness, okay? All right, so the first thing, and here I'm not going to bother with slicers. I'm just going to do just a normal table sort. So here, I could have had blank answers, but I just want to look at who selected Google Sheets. So I now have my number for Google Suite. So what I want to do is copy that down. And this is really important. When I paste, don't do a regular paste. Because here's the problem if I do a regular paste. If I now change this sort, say to Microsoft, and I did a regular paste, it's going to change the number down here. And I don't want that. I want it static so that I can do my analysis, okay? So what I'm going to do, and I can start with Microsoft again, is I'm going to do copy when I go, and I'll put it here too. I'm going to put Microsoft over here. And now when I go to paste, I have to spell Microsoft right, but I'll do that in a minute. I'm going to go copy, and when I go paste, I'm going to do paste special, and I'm going to paste values. That's really important. Now I'm going to go back and refilter and do Google. And this one's fairly easy. It's only 2 items, okay? And now again, I'm going to copy. And when I go to paste, I'm going to paste again values. Okay, so now I have how many use Microsoft. Still not. And then how many are Google? Okay, and I'm actually going to add a total. This is just a straight sum. Right? Now I'm just going to do a little formula. I'm just going to copy the total. Here too, you probably would want to do a copy paste. And then what I'm going to do is very simple formula. I'm just going to take the the number of items divided by the total. And while it shows it as a decimal, if I change this to percent, then I can do the same thing here. I could actually, well, I'd have to lock this. I don't want to get too fancy with you guys, so I'm just going to do it that way. And now I know what percent is for each one of the items, okay? So I don't know that I'm going to go through all these steps, but I want to point out that I could do the same thing. I want to make sure I unfilter again, but I could have done the same thing with the choices of personal wellness. So the choices were not very interested, somewhat interested, very interested, or I didn't answer, okay? So maybe I just want to look at the not very interested. So that gives me 5. So again, I always want to make sure that I copy them down, but I do a copy values. Now I come back and I do somewhat interested. That's 1. I once again copy that, paste special, copy values. Very interested. That's a 3. Paste special, values. And there we go. I have my data. Okay. So any questions? And then doing the percents or just calculating the percents. Okay. So again, this totaling is really cool. All right. All right. So we just have one more thing I want to just show you. It's probably, consider it like extra innings. Some things that might be helpful. Okay. So if you have a very large data set and you have all these blank lines, it might be nice to be able to get rid of the blank lines. If there's only a couple, if something small, I could just delete them. But if it's not, this can come really in hand, come in handy. So you go to special and you select blanks. That highlights the blanks. Then you go to delete and it takes out the blanks. So there's your blanks are gone. Okay, any questions on that? So I'm just gonna just quickly repeat how you do that, all right? So here are my blank rows. I just highlight all of my data. I go to find, I go to special. I say just highlight the blanks. Then I go to delete, it takes them out. Okay. Questions? All right. All right. So now I got the last one, and then we're all out of here. Okay. So while I told you that it's not case sensitive, there may be reasons for aesthetics why you want to get rid of things where there's differences in case, etc. So I just want to show you a couple of other quick text functions that are kind of handy. So one of them is proper, okay? So here I have pizza. I select proper. It changes it from uppercase to capitalizing the first letter. Now, once I do it in one, I can actually scroll down. And so now this fixes any of the situations where some are lowercase, some are uppercase. There are some other options here. I'll show you a few other ones, even though I'm not going to do them all. So you can make it's proper, upper, or lower. So proper capitalizes all of the first letters. Upper makes it all uppercase. Lower makes it all lowercase. Okay? So I just got one more thing to show you, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. And so I'm just going to purposely, I think I actually did these already, but I'll do them again. Okay? So remember I talked in the beginning about leading spaces, spaces in front, or actually I'll do it over here, okay? I'll just do 2 of them. Okay, so here what I'm going to do with taco is I'm going to add an extra space. In fact, I'm going to add an extra space on both sides. Here, under side salad, I'm going to add an extra space. How many of you have had that when people are entering data, they add an extra space between their name, between two words in their name? Okay, so one of the ways you can easily fix that without having to go crazy with your eyeball is this feature called trim. So all I'm doing is highlighting the cell. So that gets rid of leading spaces, trailing spaces, leading spaces, or extra spaces between words. And that corrected it. So if you notice, here's an extra space in the beginning. The one over here you wouldn't see, okay? So those two features are really handy, especially more for when you get into pivot tables, these cause real problems if you have leadings and trailings. The side salad one will show up as a different item on the filtering because of the extra space. So sometimes if I'm working with a very large set, I will trim my whole set of data just to clean it up. Then I get rid of the original. Okay, by the way, if you're going to get rid of the original, make sure you do a copy and a paste. Okay, could you repeat upper and lower? Sure. So here we go. There we go. That changes to lower. So you have proper, upper, lower. Proper just capitalizes the first letter. Upper makes the whole thing uppercase. The other one makes the whole thing lowercase. And if you forget it, look it up. Okay. All right. So those are good ones. I rarely use upper and lower, but I definitely use proper and I definitely use trim from time to time, especially if it's data where a lot of people have entered it, because it's funny, it's a strange things what people enter. Okay. All right. So we're over on time. Any quick questions before we end? Okay. No, you can't highlight to trim the whole table. However, if you do a trim, you're going to have to copy it down. You can't highlight. So here's an example. Let me show. And some of it I did already, but let me give you an example. If I did trim, well, actually, let me do proper first. Proper. And I highlight it on the first item. If you're asking, can you scroll down? Absolutely. You wouldn't have to manually do every row. Okay. Because it's any other kind of copying. It's just taking trim and applying it. So no, you wouldn't have to do every individual line. You can't just highlight the table to do it, but you certainly could in this column then, scroll it all the way down to the bottom. Okay, does that answer the question? So yes, you could trim that whole, column. Yeah, but you just wouldn't do it the same way. Yes, I will send it to everyone. Okay. All right. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then at that point, I'll hang around for a couple